Hola, nosotros somos estudiantes del curso de Servicio de Aprendizaje en Español de la Universidad de Florida en Gainesville.
Durante la primavera del 2015, exploramos el tema de la inmigración hispanoamericana en Estados Unidos, especialmente las experiencias de los hijos, aquellos que son los primeros ciudadanos estadounidenses en su familia.
Estos jóvenes crecen en ambientes biculturales, en donde las costumbres de sus padres de origen coexisten con la cultura y la política estadounidenses.
Algunos aprenden el inglés y el español simultáneamente, otros aprenden el inglés como primer idioma y usan el español solo para comunicarse con sus familiares.
En algunos casos solo aprenden inglés a pesar de que en sus hogares se habla español.
Como efecto de esta experiencia social, algunos de estos jóvenes, además del inglés, hablan en Spanglish o en code switching, dos áreas de mucho interés para los lingüistas.
La estructura familiar es otro de los aspectos más conflictivos en el momento de tomar decisiones, sobre todo cuando las tradiciones culturales de los padres se alejan de las tradiciones que sus hijos aprenden en la escuela o la comunidad.
En este video entrevistaremos a 4 jóvenes que han vivido esta experiencia. Nos proponemos entender cuál ha sido su vida en sus hogares y cómo construyen la visión del mundo entre dos o más culturas y cómo identifican con su cultura.
En este video entrevistamos a José, un chico de familia guatemalteca que nos habla precisamente de la experiencia del idioma en la familia.
También entrevistamos a Lauren, una joven cubanoamericana que nos cuenta la historia de sus padres y cómo sus sacrificios se reflejan en todas las cosas que ha logrado en su vida, entre ellas su grado universitario.
Conocemos a Elsie, quien nos cuenta sobre su experiencia como mexicana en este país, cómo se adapta a las situaciones tan diversas como la comida, el idioma, las culturas de sus amigas versus las costumbres en su hogar. Además, conversamos con Nicole, una joven de origen hondureño que viajó hasta Centroamérica para conocer a su familia y nos narra el impacto cultural que experimentó durante su visita.
Muchas gracias por su interés en el tema del servicio de aprendizaje, sobre todo por permitirnos compartir con ustedes esta experiencia educativa sobre el tema de la inmigración hispanoamericana.
Esperamos que nuestro trabajo, sea del agrado de todos y que sea una herramienta valiosa para aquellos que exploran el tema de los hijos de los inmigrantes. Ahora los dejamos con nuestro documental, First Generation American, The Children of Latin American Immigrants in the United States.
¡Que lo disfruten!
I'm from Northport, Florida, which is in the southwest part of the state. My mother came here when she was 19 years old. She had a sister that moved to San Jose originally from Guatemala, and then her sister moved to Northport. And then from there, my mother wanted a better opportunity, so she came here. Yeah, because my aunt was living here, it was much easier for her to move here. My aunt came here illegally, but she got married to an American citizen. So she was able to become a citizen through that. The main thing I'd probably do is like during the Christmas time. We celebrate on Christmas Eve at midnight, and then we, eat and open presents into the morning. I really like that a lot. Yeah, I think it's pretty important for them to know Spanish. Obviously, with the world becoming more globalized, it's imperative to understand other cultures, values, traditions, and on top of getting to know and talk to your own family. I unfortunately don't know as much Spanish, and it kind of causes this, I wouldn't say friction, but a bit of an issue when my family visits. And you know, you want to be able to communicate with your family. I think that's pretty big. And like when my grandmother comes, she doesn't know any English, so that at times poses some issues. But I remember this past Christmas, I was talking to my little cousins. They're like 13 and I think 7. And they were asking me questions, and I was trying to answer in Spanish, and it got a little frustrating for them. So they gave me their tablet, and it was like the Google Translate, and they're like, just type it in here, and it'll tell us. So, I mean, I don't know, that was just a little bit, not a hint or a, you know, an attack or anything, but it's just like, oh, maybe it would be better to know, you know. I consider myself first and foremost probably American. That happens, I guess, maybe to be Latino. I take a lot of pride in being in this country. One, because of the opportunities that have been presented because of it. I wouldn't have had it there in Guatemala, or if I did, it would be at a much lower level. I'm at times a bit of the black sheep of the family. I've been more Americanized than any of them. And that at times, you know, people want you to understand where you came from. No, actually, I haven't. And that's something that has been a bit of issue with my mother and I, because I've been wanting to go back lately, just because of, you know, I'm getting older, there's going to be less opportunities to travel, and she was kind of hesitant to go back, and we tried. I mean, I'm sure there's a certain level of anguish she feels. She also left the country and family and people there, so, you know, her own inner struggle of going back, you know, is something that I probably won't be able to understand, and I haven't really dug too deep into like the cause of why she hasn't wanted to go. It's been more of like a surface level argument, I guess I would say. But I'm sure there's even some demons or issues that she wanted to leave and that maybe she's not ready to go back and face. One of them is my older cousin Amanda. She went back and she stays in touch well with even some of the cousins that are there. She speaks Spanish probably better than my other cousin Matthew and I do. Matthew isn't very connected at all. He's more Americanized than I am probably. So I think if it was like a range, like of being a part of the Hispanic community, Amanda would be here, I would be like in the middle, and Matthew would be at the very end. I don't know if I would say that they like her better, but they can probably understand and relate to her better. Just like with anything else, if you can speak, you know, the same language and maybe hold the same ideas, you'll probably understand them better. But I'm going to be the first one in the family to graduate from a university, and I think that has that's a big deal to my family. My uncle he wants to move here is actually coming to my graduation to show his 2 daughters that, you know, you can succeed here and you can graduate if we do decide to move here. So I think there's a whole, you know, list and range of issues of, you know, what they look up to me to compared to maybe Amanda or Matthew. And I think immigration reform would be something that is beneficial for all sectors, all people, because it would create jobs. The tech industry especially wants immigration reform done, increasing HB1 visas because they have a shortage of high-skilled workers. And if you can help solve that issue, it'll be able to fuel a lot more job creation, innovation, and things of that nature. And then from an empathy standpoint, there are, I think, 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country, and right now the policies we have in place break up families, and it's just not the country we are and the values we hold. So I think you need a comprehensive reform where you basically have amnesty and you allow people to stay, because it's impossible to deport 11 million people.
My name is Elsie Medrano. I'm from Miami. My parents are from Mexico, both of them. Growing up in Miami was definitely something. I was kind of like, not submerged, but I was surrounded by so many different people, Caribbeans, South Americans, just people from all over the place, and I learned a little bit from each of them, and it's been interesting. I feel like Miami is just so diverse. There's a ton of Hispanics, so I'm able to, speak Spanish whenever I'm out, and with my parents, I always speak in Spanish. Up here, I have to kind of just speak English, and sometimes it's not fun. To start a family and to give us an opportunity to just, have a good life. They came from rural. They had like their farms. They like raised cattle. So they had a ton of responsibilities. They had to work pretty hard. So when they came here, they brought that. When my parents got married, they just moved here permanently. My dad became a citizen, and then my mom became a resident. My mom doesn't speak any English. She understands very little of it. My dad can speak it a little, understands it completely, but it's just adjusting to language. A lot of discrimination against them as well, so it's just like adjusting to that. Like their traditions, their food, their holidays, their, I think, maybe attire a little bit. No, not too much of that. Yeah, just their work ethic, their everything, pretty much. They would wake up really early and start working, and they're really like dedicated to whatever they were doing, and I feel like I've kind of acquired that. And then food-wise, oh my god, the food is so good. They definitely taught me how to cook pretty well. It's just so much flavor. It's so good. It's just so delicious, right? And my parents actually they wanna start a little restaurant when they're a little bit older, and just have all this I guess Mexican cuisine here. And yeah, just bring like actual traditional Mexican food. The American dream is just going through school and finding a career that you're really interested in, and something that you would like to invest the rest of your life with. And as long as you succeed in that, then that's the American dream. They do know that to be here, you need to, do well in school, get into college, graduate, and then, find a job or a career. And that's their view of being successful here. So they did want that, and then because they didn't go to school, they really wanted us to have the opportunity to do it. And so, they did kind of pressure us to do it, but they didn't force us to do it. They just supported us, whatever we wanted to do. I remember back in high school, I would tell my Mom, I want to drop out of school. And she'd just go with it. She's like, okay, go work in the fields then. And I would just, okay, I guess I won't. I do think they miss it, mostly because their family is still over there. Well, yeah, everyone is over there, but given the situation in Mexico at the moment, they don't really want to go. There's a lot of killings, like I guess gangs. Yeah, there's lots of public display of deaths. Yeah, it's bad. So they don't want us to go to Mexico at this time. But yeah, they do want us to visit our family eventually.
Hi, my name is Nicole Romero. I was born in Miami, Florida. I go to the University of Florida, and I am a sophomore studying political science and women's studies. I enjoy reading, watching Netflix, and dancing. I am very interested in going to law school. My parents were born in Honduras, from the capital, Tegucigalpa, and they came to the United States before I was born, and they came in search of a better life. I've only visited Honduras once, and I went around when I was 5 years old. I don't remember much, but I do remember the difference of Honduras and the United States. It was a lot poorer there, a lot dirtier, so being there was very, different. I remember staying at my aunt's house, and it was a very little house, and I haven't gone back since, but I've heard that it's also been very dangerous now, and that it's just so much crime there, and that it's still in bad condition. So it definitely makes me appreciate the life I have here and the fact that my parents came here. Reflecting on my life and my parents' history makes me understand why my parents moved here. It would have been very different if they would have stayed. I know that coming here was a better opportunity for my parents, my brother, and I. I wasn't born yet, but every time my parents talk about their history, they always tell me how I'm lucky that I live here. I know now that if my parents maybe wouldn't have moved here, maybe I wouldn't have been born, or maybe if I was, my life would be completely different. I wouldn't have had all the opportunities that I have to come to study at the University of Florida. I've been abroad a bunch of times, and thanks to my parents, and I'm sure I wouldn't have had those opportunities. I might not have finished high school, or maybe I might not have gone to college in Honduras. I know over there it's very about the importance over there is family, not education, so maybe I would have been married and with kids at a very young age, and there's nothing wrong with those views, but I would prefer to be studying right now and wait until I'm older to settle for a family and a husband. I know that things would be, that we wouldn't have money. Right now we're middle class, and that's fine, but I'm pretty sure it would be worse for us back there. We wouldn't have the house we have. It just would have been really different. So in my family currently, our Hispanic culture isn't very rooted into our family. We've become very Americanized. But when I was younger, my family was very into the traditions. They only spoke Spanish, and they taught me Spanish first, and then they taught me English. And I remember my mom telling me not too long ago how when I was younger and I started school, I would only speak Spanish, and she knew at that point I knew English. And she was worried that I would have to be put in ESOL classes, and she didn't want me to go through that and be in those classes for years because she knew I knew English. But she would tell me how when I would be in school, I didn't have any friends because I refused to speak English to them. I would only speak Spanish to them, and they wouldn't understand me. So when they would come play with me or try to play with me and I responded in Spanish, they would leave because they didn't understand what I was saying. So my mom was worried the whole time that I would not have friends, I would be put in ESOL classes, and that I would not speak English. But she told me how one day I just came home speaking English to her, and she was surprised that I was actually speaking English instead of Spanish. And then she started noticing that I finally started speaking English to my classmates. So her worries were gone at that point. But at that whole time she was super worried about me not knowing English or not speaking it. I remember, all our life, we open our presents on Christmas on the 24th at midnight, and which is, some families do that, but it's more a Hispanic tradition to open your gifts, not on Christmas Eve instead of Christmas Day. Food-wise, my parents always make rice and beans with steak or chicken, and we have big Thanksgiving dinners, and we always like to meet up and be a family. And I know that now I really love my Hispanic family, but I identify more as an American just because now my parents only speak English to me. We rarely speak Spanish to each other. I can only speak Spanish to my mom when I'm bad, actually. When I have to complain and I'm around people, I speak to her in Spanish. And that's the only time I actually use my Spanish language, which makes me sad because I'll see other people like speaking perfect Spanish, and it makes me jealous because I've realized that I've forgotten how to say certain things, or it'll take me a while to actually remember it. And then my writing is not that great, and I've had times where someone has asked me a question in Spanish and I had to, like, I struggled while I thought like how I would respond to them. So it makes me, like, I wish I was more into my Hispanic culture, but my family and I have both been very Americanized. We don't do many Hispanic traditions at home, except like the Christmas tradition of opening gifts on the 24th, on Christmas Eve. And my parents still cook like their Hispanic foods every now and then, but it's very like just English in the house and just very Americanized in our family now.
Mambo number 5.
I tend to speak predominantly more English, especially with my friends, but when I'm home I speak mostly Spanish. Even though my parents do speak English, I'm just more comfortable speaking to them in Spanish, and I think that makes them happier too. So. Well, my parents actually dated when they were in Cuba, when they were really, really young. Both my parents ended up coming to the United States when they were in their 16, 17, so in their teens, their late teens. They were dating before then, so it's kind of like a pretty sad romance novel. I always joke around that you could write a book about it, but so my mom ended up leaving with my grandmother, so she left her mom behind in Cuba, and they ended up going to Venezuela since it was illegal to come straight from Cuba to the United States back then. So they ended up moving to Venezuela for around 9 months. My grandmother worked there and saved up money, and then they ended up traveling here. So my mom maintained contact with my dad throughout all that time, and he was trying to find a way to the United States because he knew that's where my mom was headed. And his mom, so my grandmother from my dad's side, was already here in the United States, and she wanted to bring him. But in order to claim a son to travel to come into the United States, you need both parents' permission. And my grandfather did not want my dad to leave Cuba. So what my dad ended up doing, which is illegal, he ended up finding a way to get here without having to get my grandfather's permission. So he ended up buying a plane ticket from somebody and sneaking on that plane as a different person to Colombia. So when he went to Colombia, and then he was trying to migrate from Colombia to here, and he ended up getting lost in the jungles over there for a few months, which is crazy. I never knew this story until a few years ago, so when he told me that, I freaked out. He got lost in the jungle. He says he saw a lot of interesting things. He met like tribes and stuff, and he ended up living with them for a little bit, which is hilarious to me. And then he found his way over here, and by that time my mom had already come back to the United States, so she came to the United States, and they met up here, and they continued dating. So. You know, it makes me sad that they had to go through that, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. You know, I don't think I'd want to be born there and go through that if I didn't have to. Well, thankfully, I don't feel very discriminated in terms of how I look, but when I moved from Miami to West Palm when I was younger, and the population was less diverse than it was in Miami, I would get all sorts of questions as to, you know, where my family was from, about getting a green card or having a green card. I guess I have an accent that I never noticed when I was in Miami because everybody has that accent over there. And I had somebody ask me what kind of Mexican I spoke. But I would definitely want to share my traditions and have my child learn a second language, so Spanish. And I would definitely, I think it's interesting to share your culture with people, especially if they don't know about it, and I think that it's a big learning experience for them. We celebrate Christmas Eve, so we have something that's called Nochebuena, and that's a little party that we have, and we invite friends and family, and it's usually a bunch of people. It's not like a small family event, and that's celebrated the night before, so the 24th, and we roast a pig. There's a lot of food, a lot of desserts, and then we actually open presents that night. So that differs from American culture where, you know, we would wait till the next morning to open presents. How family-oriented I am compared to some friends that I had, or like how overprotective my parents were with me, and I've seen pretty common within all my Hispanic friends, as opposed to my girlfriends who would have sleepovers. My parents wouldn't let me come to their sleepovers, and I'd cry and why, and then, you know, my mom's like, okay, well, you can have them sleep over, and their parents didn't question it. Their parents sent them to my house. All right, have fun. You know, I was kind of like, wow, people are so carefree, like so much more carefree. Like they just have a lot more freedoms than I had. When I was around 10 or 11, I think I did get pretty angry. You know, I questioned why they weren't home or why my dad wouldn't come to school plays or concerts. And I would get pretty angry with him, and I'd show resentment towards that. But then today I feel guilty for doing that. Today, now I see all the hard work and why they work so hard. You know, I've graduated and I have a bachelor's degree, and that's something that they never were able to do here or in Cuba. And it's something that they're very, very proud of.